of technology, but also more importantly, the learners who are trying to grapple with understanding how to harness that technology. So I'm always looking for the signals in the market. And those are some of the things I'm going to talk about today is the tech directions and signals. So let's move along here. One of the quotes I discovered early on in my career, and it's stuck with me ever since, is William Gibson, the scientific writer. The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. I truly believe that is so true. It's a matter of how do we harness the technologies that are available? How do we take advantage of everything that is here? Because innovation truly does happen more incremental. As you know, it's like client server was a big thing in the 90s. And it's really kind of that same mode now. It's just retitled different things, but it's still that same sort of principles that we're talking about. So innovation does take time. It's here, it's ready to go. It's really interesting though, because Gartner, if you look at the different consulting groups like Gartner and whatnot, they expect that innovation is happening more because people are now working at home. And 30% of those people who work at home now are going to continue to work at home. So one of the innovations that's going to happen is the hybrid composition of teams and the way we interact with each other in teams. That's one of the pieces that's going to change. A couple other things that COVID has ushered in for us. Zero trust networks and MDM are huge, mobile device management, because of people being remote and having devices connected to their company's platform and those sort of things. Content collaboration systems like Teams and Zoom and other things are becoming more important. People are starting to think about, instead of just UX, having DX, digital experience. And what is that experience you're having with that company and that corporation? And the most overused term in 2020, and it still continues in 2021, is you're on mute. Hopefully we can get something. Microsoft Teams does have something that says when you're on mute now. Most all of them will get that. So let's jump in. What are we trying to modernize? I would offer that we're trying to modernize our labor force first and foremost. And it's really important when you think about it, that when you think about our labor force today, most people fall somewhere on this continuum. Whether, in one subject, maybe I'm a Python programmer and I'm very proficient at it, so I'm over here. But in AI, I may be a novice, so I might just be beginning my journey into AI. So we fit on this continuum all different places. And we need to make sure that you have opportunities to learn at each of those points in that continuum. What is that leading to? I think it's there used to be this thing called the T-shaped employee. I actually think we're moving ahead towards becoming more of this versatilist mentality over here, where you have the deep technical skills. There may be more narrow in scope. It may just be Python, or it may just be AI. You're recognized with your peers. You're known outside of your domain. You're unknown a little bit outside of your own domain. Then if you move along to a generalist, you have more of a shallow, broad repertoire. You're quick to respond to things, but you might lack a little confidence in going deeper in the technology conversation. What we're really trying to get to, though, is that versatilist, where you're looking at all of those deep and wide, broad experience recognized in other domains. And it's really interesting because Gartner says within 2 years, 40% of IT staff is going to be moving into becoming those versatilist roles, where companies are looking for them to do that more. And that's going to be required of a lot of people in an organization. And when you think about it, it kind of fits with that. You can probably do more with fewer that are really well skilled. So let's talk about how we get to that point of being skilled. So a couple things that matter for tech professionals on the left-hand column versus the non-tech professionals on the right-hand column. And I found this really fascinating. The good work-life balance is never going to go away. That's always going to be a goal. But it's interesting that it fits a little higher for the tech professional. But the number 2 and number 3 are learning and career development. So that is really important for tech people. And they understand they want to keep their career, they want to keep their technology edge sharp. They want to be able to do things. Ooh, getting some good feedback there. And so the other thing that I found kind of interesting here is that the tech professional, these are people who will leave their job if these things aren't in order. And we're seeing, I think, a big exodus in the world tech community. And the good relationship with the superior is far less important as it is with non-tech people. I think these 3, if we can balance these, and you want to have a good relationship with colleagues. So if you can balance the top 4, I think you're in good standing. Fair question or no? Okay. So WTF, and we all use that for a different acronym, but really to me, it's what's the future? A recent poll with HR Tech, they studied a ton of people, 10,000 participants across 119 companies. They have trends for 10 years and they have trends for 2021. Interesting that worker well-being obviously was top and doing well there. So let me just highlight a couple things. One I mentioned earlier, soft skills become power skills. And this one I found really interesting, recruit for skills and not college pedigree. I think that's been a change, that most people thought you had to have a really good college pedigree to get a great job. Nowadays, if you have the skills and you can really deploy those skills, you're in good standing. So that's really important. But I think the one that struck me the most on all of these is the key for the next 10 years is learning how to learn, learning how to relearn, and learning how to unlearn. If you're going to learn something new, you sometimes have to unlearn what you know and relearn something that you might have known a little bit. But also just the fact that you need to learn how to learn. To me, it's much like exercise or playing a musical instrument or whatever. You have to set aside time and you have to be consistent with it, do it, and make sure you keep learning. And that will take you a long, long way in a career. So to me, the big 3 for the future are learning to learn, learning to relearn, and learning to unlearn. If you're doing something that you've done that wasn't agile and you're now agile, you need to unlearn those habits. So those are things I think that are very important. But let's also take a look around the globe. And this is what the World Economic Forum says in the next 4 years. And this one's a really tough one because I think a couple of these are really achievable, even though they show as a high barrier to tech adoption. So the skills in your local market are going to remain. So you've got to figure out how to train the people you have or how to upskill yourself so you can do in this market that you're in. But the other one that I just think is unacceptable is don't understand the opportunities. That's when the tech people don't work with the business people and the business people don't work with the tech people so that they really don't understand the opportunity to take advantage of technology. And that is related to the next one. And I think this is also unacceptable, the skills gap with leadership. Leaders need to have more than just the soft skills that they seem to go down that path with. They need to have tech skills as well. They need to stay sharp. They need to understand what it is technology will do for them and be able to make the trade-offs that are important to their organization. The skills gap global is not going to change. We've got a lot of companies that said they can just hire from India or China. Well, think again, because India needs more qualified talent in their own market. China wants to keep its talent in its own economy. And even countries like Vietnam, they have programs now to keep people in their country. So the world global market isn't going to get any better. So this is all leading to, you need to train the people you have, and you need to train yourself. And again, going back to becoming versatilists, these are the things, and this is really interesting because Burning Glass, I don't know if you know who they are, but they're a job aggregator. They scrape the web for all job postings, and then the roles in those postings and the skills that are associated with what they're looking for. And what they've done is mapped it into three main areas: the digital building blocks, which I would call the tech skills here; the human skills, the ability to communicate, to collaborate, to do some critical thinking, those sort of things are the human skills. But then the business enablers, understanding what your organization wants to do, how to manage projects in your company, how to communicate with data, those sort of things that really are business enablers. Why is this important? Because the smart cities around the globe are already hiring those people, and they're hiring them in really big numbers. So I'm going to show you in a second here what that is going to mean. But right now, the smart cities have 62 percentage points more than what I would call the dumb cities that aren't hiring for those skills with those type of people. These are the foundational skills of a versatilist and what people are looking to hire. So let's go over to the next slide. These are the the smart cities in the world. They're measured on 9 different factors. I think only number 1 and number 9 really matter. If you have the human capital and they can harness the technology, the other ones kind of work together, but you have to have all 9 to become a smart city. Now, what this means, the little dots here show the different parts of the globe, and there's the cities here. What that means to me is, hooray that you're a smart city, but you're going to see a shortage sooner in talent, in your talent pool. So if you live in one of these cities and you build those versatilist skills, you will be able to command whatever salary and job opportunities you want. But what this is leading to is the rise in the secondary cities now, and especially because COVID has shown us that virtual work works. It does work. So companies like my own, we've actually excelled during COVID. So companies can do it. Virtual work is teaching us you don't have to be in a technology hub or a smart city to be successful. You can live in the middle of a cornfield in who knows where and be fine, as long as you have connectivity. So I think the nature of work is changing. This measuring on 9 factors, I think we should probably revisit that. The World Economic Forum should, because I just think that there's changing things with the way we're all responding to COVID. But there are 6 things I think are really important for modernizing your IT infrastructure, and hopefully they will start to build. One is 24/7 availability for your learning. It needs to be accessible, it needs to be safe, it has to have all expertise levels. I think, when we saw that, one of the changes in the world economy is that leaders need training too. So all expertise levels, including your management, and probably most importantly, management as well. It's hard to get things done if the C-suite and your executives don't understand what you're doing or why you're doing it. So having them be educated is important. That sounds kind of funny, but it's important that you have them educated as well. Primary goals for learning. Make sure you have the opportunity to have people upskill and reskill in your organization. And introducing a new word here for you, pre-skilling. It's important to let people try something. They may not, someone may say, well, I've been working with Excel for years and I have some Excel skills. I want to try this data science thing. Probably Excel is not really the precursor for data science, but if someone wants to try it, put them in a safe environment, put them in a safe scenario where their job isn't dependent on, if you don't do this correctly, you're not going to have this new job. Let them try it. Let them do it on their own, maybe 2 hours a week. Let them pre-skill, and you will keep people in your organization longer, and you'll be able to reskill them and upskill them and you won't lose institutional knowledge when they leave to try an opportunity elsewhere. You need to be able to make sure you have a good checklist to evaluate training programs. I'm not going to go too much into that. Just what you need, what must you have, those sort of things. Fair assessments, I'll talk about a little bit later. And continual learning, safe environment, broad, diverse, deep, and practical, all important things here. You know what's interesting is other countries do things so differently than we're all different. So in Japan, parents take their teachers out for dinner and drinks and that sort of thing. United Kingdom did a study where children who wore slippers got better grades. Just being more relaxed at school, you get a better grade. Korea and Japan, napping in school is encouraged. If someone's tired, refresh the brain. Wales has learned that loosening playground regulations, like not being so stringent, has reduced bullying in their schools. Finland and Sweden, children call their teachers by their first name, which I think is great. I don't want to be called sir or Mr. blah, blah, blah. Just call me Mike. That's fine. Denmark, coffee and tea breaks during class. So my point with all of this is we have to think differently about the future, because the future is, again, it's here. We just need to harness it and figure out how we're going to go through it together. So make learning a cultural norm. These are the areas we're going to explore now. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth about the technologies that we see. These are the main categories here in the middle that I'm going to talk about. Software craftsmanship, which is our largest area, followed by programming, and then followed by data. And data includes ML, DL, AI, those sort of things, everything that's related to the data family. And you can see here the families are in there. And then comes infrastructure, which has a lot of our certification content in there, and how to configure routers and devices and Linux and those sort of operating systems. And then comes cloud, which is growing. And in fact, I think these two are swapping very soon. Cloud is an area that has been growing quite a bit. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, is security. And security is a small one. It always is. There are fewer security professionals intentionally. If everyone was a security professional, there would be no security, because we'd all know how to break in and do things. So security is the smallest, but I think the most important one. And we'll go ahead and dive in on these, and I'll explain just before we do that, how do those same categories here, cloud, data, infrastructure, programming, security, and software, what industries use them the most, and what industries are using it for their own industry the most? So when you see here cloud, the top number is measuring the industry. So for business and services, cloud is 15%, data is 10, infrastructure is 22, programming is 13, security is 11, and software craft 27. Now for the whole cloud area, business services is 49% of that whole area. So in our company, business services, the Accentures, the DXCs, the HCLs, all of those companies around the globe consume a lot of content. And this is what this is measured on, so what they're consuming. And you can see the different areas. This one looks like a big anomaly here for healthcare, but it's only because their other pieces of their content is so small. So, that's the relationship that shows there. But this just gives you an insight on who is the most balanced. It is the business services and consulting, but nonprofit is a surprise. Banking and finance, education, they're all doing insurance. They're all doing very well. So, a lot of industries have done well. I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about a meaning measurement of your capabilities. When you take a learning course or a training course, make sure that whatever you do, you get measured on, did you learn that subject you just sat through an hour to learn? Don't be driven by being compared to others, because it doesn't matter if the others are dunderheads and they don't understand what they just learned and you get measured against them. Why would you care? So unfortunately, the way we work in this world, unfortunately, when we go through school, is we do this what's called normative testing, where you all take a test, and if you all bomb, someone still gets a good grade, because it's normative. It varies and adjusts to the criterion. Criterion reference testing is, do you know the objective? Can you demonstrate you know that? Did you get it right or did you get it wrong? It's not comparing you to other people. Now, one thing you can do is first measure this way and then come up with this sort of normative base. How do you fit on the scale of things? But make sure that you're being tested on what you just took. So here's an example, I believe, of, you can think about this. 10 people take a test, right? 7 people get 3 questions correct. 3 people get 4 questions correct. Those 3 people are going to get a higher grade, higher rating, and yet 0 people, in my book, know the topic. That's not a good measurement. Don't let your career be decided by being compared to others you have no idea who they are. So let's jump into the topic areas a little bit more. These are some of the trends that we hear from customers around the world about what is important for them right now. And software craft typically involves building software in the large rather than programming in the small, like your own module, your own unit. So I will talk about a little bit of the difference there. So what we're seeing here is a lot around AI. But the tough part is people are having a hard time putting the I in AI. They're doing a lot of artificial stuff in chatbots and things like that. But the intelligence part is really the part that's the tough one. Building all the data pipelines and where you're getting that meaningful insight from a data source and bringing it into an application to make something the right recommendation or the right suggestion, that sort of thing. IoT just keeps chugging along. We keep getting a lot of feedback from customers that they're trying to integrate IoT devices into their data sets, into their cloud, at the edge. All of these things are kind of converging with companies. You can imagine, we had a project in Cambridge here in Massachusetts that was detecting smog at different peak traffic times, all done in the field at the edge with IoT devices. But the next thing would be able to make the traffic lights change using some predictive algorithms on traffic surge and that sort of thing. So that's where they all three come together, and that's where I think we're going. Public clouds and cloud availability and popularity is now helping distribute workloads, and perhaps, though, layering on some security and governance issues that we're going to have to look at. Application architectures, the platform as a service, really are starting to accelerate API-centric services and products. And it's kind of ushering in this new whole partnership with other companies much more. Like, if you have an API, we can connect, we can do business, we can hopefully have a better business together. So that API-centric and platform as a service, I think, is a thing to keep your eyes on. Cloud native, I think it's still going to be driving. So many established companies want to become cloud native, and those who just started their company are probably cloud native to begin with and have less baggage. But the established companies are really trying to become that cloud native when they're building their applications. Storytelling, a new UX trend that's taking products, services, and companies to the next level, but it's an art. It really is combining the soft skills with the tech skills, and how do you evolve and change products. So that one's, I think, a pretty interesting one to keep your eye on there. So some of the things I've already talked about, I'm not going to reiterate them. The one I didn't talk about is the second one, mobile. I think it's big, and it's even going to be bigger post-pandemic if we ever get to post-pandemic someday. That device capabilities to achieve safe distancing, remote collaboration, tracking and tracing, that sort of thing, zero touch contact. When you go into Starbucks or your coffee shop, can you go in there without touching anything and buy and have it ordered? You probably can to some degree now, but you can't do that in a grocery store or some other type of store, which you should be able to do. Shop online at home, go in and pick it up, pay with your phone and have no touch on anything. That would be great. So that's one that I think we need to keep our eyes on. The software and partnership, I think, is really going to become even bigger. You know, the big three, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, and really it's kind of a two-horse race with a really pretty horse, Google, in the race, but probably not as far out in front as the other two. A lot of that has to do with the cloud. But remember, when you start building things in those clouds, then the other tools they have make more sense for you to use. So it becomes kind of, unfortunately, it seems like we're going back to the 90s where you're getting a little bit of that lock-in feel where you're all hook, line, and sinker in one technology stack. But the other ones, the enterprise agile companies, the Atlassians, the GitLabs, in some degree, some of the companies Microsoft has purchased and those sort of things, I think are going to help bring more tools. The open source community is where I think the biggest upside is because they will continue to innovate. I think there'll be more innovation coming out of open source, and then they typically integrate with the existing platforms that are out there. So those are a couple of the things that I see there. If we look at what people are using in software craftsmanship, it's very interesting. You know, I excluded the business and consulting services because they just skew this really off the chart. So they're not included, and neither is this category we have called other, because it still is kind of big. But nonprofit and insurance, education, banking, and finance really do care about how they're building software and how they deliver software and the different types of methodologies they use. Let me continue on. And this is why I showed you here. I took away business services because you can see their chart here, down here, and this is what the industry looks like there. So you can see they're just light years ahead in our platform. If we look at by the categories, the subcategories, you can see that software project management remains a top area, but Agile is also across all industries being used, and project management is. Testing is starting to become more and more prevalent, especially because of automated testing. And you know, if you're doing DevOps, which is also evident in all of the industries here, you're starting to use those tools and think that way. It's going to become more important. But I thought I'd point your eye to something that hasn't really shown a big emergence yet, but it will when I rerun this data, is SRE. We just released an SRE journey, which is about 60 hours of content. And that journey is going through the roof. People are really clamoring to do site reliability engineering. And I think that has to do a little bit with, you know, working from home and having all your services up and running, your terms of service met for your customers, all of those things. SRE really can help you get a handle on that. So I think that's why it's continuing to do well. And we will probably, if we revisit this, I would imagine in 6 months, this will change here. Let's go into programming. Programming is a one-horse race. It's a 1.5 horse race. So Python leads in every measure, whether it's looking at, I scrape Stack Overflow, search for all the terms that are being asked, Python leads there. You look at Kaggle, Python leads there. You look at GitHub, Python leads there. You look at search, Python leads there. You look at our usage, our search usage, everything Python leads. It does. Everyone is trying to learn Python. What that means, though, I think, is that Java is also still really way up there on our usage data. Because if you want to learn Python, you're likely learning it to migrate your Java legacy code over to Python. So when you think about it, you have to know both. I mean, in most organizations, all of their back office is built around Java. So if you really want to spin up a team that's doing Python-oriented stuff, it's likely a data team. But if that data team needs to access back office and other systems, you need to know Java. So Java is still doing very well, even though it is that one horse race. Java is not quite neck and neck, but it's not out of the race by any means. The other thing that is happening is Go. Go is getting a big push for whatever reason. It's the most loved on Stack Overflow, but it's something that developers are starting to kick the tires around. And speaking of kicking the tires, if you want, in our platform, we have this really easy thing to do. It's called a practice lab, where you don't have to figure out how to install Go and do all these different things to make your system work and accept all the libraries you have to install. You can just run it in this virtual world, and you can try Go very easily. Android still everywhere, and it's driving things like Kotlin and those things. The question I have, though, I've heard some people think Rust is ready to break through. I'm not sure I would bet any of my Bitcoins on Rust. I don't think it really is going to be prime time yet, even though supposedly Microsoft is going to get behind it. If so, we might see it move up the charts. I don't know if it'll rival Go anytime soon, but Go seems to be the new language that's breaking in near Python and Java, that sort of thing. So as I mentioned, Java stays entrenched because of the legacy nature. I think innovation around Java is still happening. There are different frameworks and different APIs that you can use, so that is helping. API creation and the ecosystem around API, I think is going to remain strong. Data and Python are like, I always say eggs and bacon or ham and eggs. For those who are vegetarians, it's probably chickpeas and something good. But Python and data go really well together. What the fascinating thing to me is that C and C++ are still kicking. They're still being utilized heavily. And if you look at Stack Overflow, there's a lot of questions on C and C++. I think it's because of device-oriented and IoT. When you need true hardware performance, it is IoT-oriented, and it's still an area to be reckoned with. But the data and the Python, 93%, a Kaggle survey says 93% of data scientists use Python. I would probably say the other 7%, 6 of it's probably with R, and then the other one's probably Scala and other things, or maybe even Go. Python and data really go well together. Programming and partnership. I think I mentioned this on the last slide a bit, but Oracle, Apple, Microsoft, Google, HubSpot, GitLab, Atlassian, they all have plays to make things better for programmers and developers. Distributed Agile, I think is going to be really important in the future, because Agile, I think, can help when we have remote teams working together. I think we need to have more modular IDEs, though. And then open source tools can obviously help alleviate a lot of this, working together remotely and yet still bringing it all together. So I think there's a lot of tools to help there. Which industries are using programming the most? Nonprofit again. Banking and finance, quite a bit. Insurance, manufacturing. It's kind of interesting because there is a swap when you see the other areas coming up where nonprofit will be much smaller. So I think they're just to keep in mind where it's being used the most. You look at by the industries and the different types of programming that they're doing. So Python is in pretty much every industry. And the C family, which is where C and C++ are, is small. but pretty big in aerospace, which is hardware oriented, manufacturing, which is hardware oriented, medical, which is device hardware oriented. So again, I think the hypothesis that C and C++ are seeing a resurgence is because of equipment. I'm pretty sure that is ferreted out here in the data. Java is across the board in every industry. So you can see where things are moving and where they aren't. Let's move into data, because I think this is one of the more interesting areas. Smarter, more responsible, and scalable AI. Smarter AI, I think, is the first word that needs to really be addressed. We're all done with silly chatbots that when you go onto a website, they want to know, hey, you're a regular visitor, can I help you? No, thanks, not yet. No, when I get stuck. Don't just bug me because you're there. Bug me when you know I have a problem. So we need smarter AI, not just more of it. I think all of us probably feel that way. You don't need to be bugged all the time, but if you're truly stuck, that would be nice to have them help bail you out. But that's going to need a lot more intelligence in the AI. So I think that's an important piece. Data fabric, I think, is really interesting. When we move towards mesh networks and those sort of things, data fabric is really becoming a foundation. I think that has relationship to big data moves to small and wide data. I think wide data is the really fascinating piece. Like when we look at what we're going to build in our organization from a content perspective, we look at Stack Overflow, Burning Glass, our search consumption, our usage consumption, LinkedIn, Google Trends, and there's several other ones that we bring together from a wide perspective and relate them together and make sense out of the data we have. So this whole wide data, I think, is a really important concept. Big data, I think, went out like 10 years ago, but anyway. Engineering decision intelligence, I think, is going to be a really important one for everyone. That when you think about, we're often depending on social science and decision theory and managerial science. And the basic idea is that decisions are based on our understanding of how actions lead to outcomes. That's really important if we can build that into software. So graph, again, kind of related to that big data, you can get things on a graph. Augmented consumers. I think, our goal is to give data to consumers so they can make better decisions. But then on the other side, we need to have better experiences for them when they come to experience our platform. So that it goes two ways. We're augmenting the consumer, but are we making that consumer's experience at our site much more usable for them and a better experience? I think those two go together. So if you augment consumers, make sure you have the other side worked out as well. Accelerating change, smarter, more responsible AI, I talked about. Composable data and analytics, helping the rise of citizen data science with composable data and analytics. We see so many companies doing citizen data science programs, or what they call citizen scientists, or there's also data literacy is another term people use, but that's huge. Like getting it around an organization is very important. The data fabric is becoming a foundation where if you want to put I in your AI, look at data fabric and mesh networks, that sort of thing. Bring small to big and wide, like I mentioned already. Graph and relativity. Graph is really driving many AI initiatives. It requires a deeper set of data and AI skills. Things like an ontology manager and things like that are going to go into that. So graph underpins the richer semantic models needed to succeed. Data at the edge, I think, is really important, and how we process it at the edge and keep it at the edge, make decisions at the edge, everywhere. I think that's where we want to be. I think the world is at least 5 to 10 years off. And, I said that in 1989 when I moved out here to MIT, and, expert systems and that were the big rage at the time, and we're still talking about them. So I'm hoping we get data at the edge and harness it and use it, because that really does become, innovation is here. It's just not evenly distributed. This will evenly distribute it and make it available for everyone. And then the consumer hyper-focus. I think we all know consumers are kind of hyper-focused. And I mentioned that earlier, make it so their experience works. Arm them, but make it armed so that it works for you and them both. Which industries are using data the most? Insurance, no surprise there. Banking and finance, no surprise there. Manufacturing, that is a surprise that it's higher than a couple of the other groups. Making better decisions in manufacturing, we could use that right now. That's actually probably transportation. Where do they sit? Right here. Unfortunately, the world could see transportation having better data systems built. We're seeing this whole, we have the supply, we have the demand, we just can't get it to you. That's an unfortunate situation that hopefully COVID will help this group extend their data out into here where they belong, so we don't have the supply demand problem that we're seeing around the world. Industries by category, data programming goes across all of them. And data programming is stuff like SQL, NoSQL, those sort of things where you're actually programming to retrieve data and bring it back. The processing is what you're doing to the data, how you're preparing it, that sort of thing. That's across most industries, as is AI and analytics. Even though they're still kind of nascent, they're starting to gain some traction. And I really hope this group, transportation here, gets these two moving in the right direction. So those are where we're seeing most action for those. Infrastructure. Everything I've talked about so far doesn't work if you don't have infrastructure built. So to me, in a way, I say security is the most important. This is 1A. It's not 2 or 3, it's 1A. Security is 1, infrastructure is 1A. It's really important. And so many companies have so much of this going on that in our infrastructure category, we put a lot of our certifications, the CompTIAs, the Cisco certifications, all of those sit in there. So it's traditional back office IT, very much hardware oriented, very much, having everything to do with devices, equipment, operating systems, those sort of things. So that's where that sits. Hybrid environments where you're having cloud intersecting with your on-prem equipment and devices and all of those is changing the way a lot of companies are working. 5G, we've seen a huge increase in we have a 5G journey, huge increase in people actually consuming 5G. It was always this promise for the last 5-6 years. I think people are actually starting to consume it because it's becoming more real. And then remote working. I think that's going to change the nature of this infrastructure world. And I think it's going to change it for the better, because even if you think about it, if we're making security better because people are working remotely, why didn't we just make it better to begin with? Why does having someone work remotely make a difference if you make your security better? It should be better in all instances, and regardless of where people are sitting, make security better. So why do we want to accelerate infrastructure modernization? I think it leads to innovation. It leads to efficiencies. We know that. Leads to better security. It can lead to better security. Leads to more flexibility and agility. Better enabled workflows. Go to market speeds up. Improves quality. Can improve quality. Can improve your customer experience, just to name a few. So I look at it really as you folks that work in infrastructure are changing the wheels on a moving vehicle. And by the way, this YouTube video, it's actually showing these guys change the wheels on that vehicle as they're moving. It's hard to do, but it's doable, and that's what you need to do to move forward in this world today. because it's hard to shut things down and just say they're off for a while. It doesn't work. So these are just some of the other pieces here that I'm just going to talk about. So this one, I got this chart from Gartner, and I thought it was very interesting because when you look at infrastructure, there is a lot going on, and they do put in security and infrastructure. So that's included in their part of this. But I point out right away that there's some things here on the outer fringe that are important to look at. Signatureless application level detection and protection. Yes, we need to get to that point. We need to be able to protect what we have. NLP, I think, is a huge, huge area for people to increase their ability to process natural language interactions. AI ops is more important, I think, here. I think we need to get the ops part down, put it into practice. Disaster recovery. How many companies, when they went remote, needed to have some disaster recovery? And we also see, with the rise of state actors going after private entities, like hacking them, you're going to have a disaster recovery as a service, so you can roll it out and use it anytime you need it. Composable infrastructure, where you can plug and play and basically pull and plug things that you need. And then software-defined perimeter. I really like the software-defined everything. Maybe that's a new term, software-defined everything, but having a perimeter of your network, because it's getting larger, sometimes it gets smaller. It might change with acquisitions, it might change with, mergers, it might change with all sorts of things, but if it's software-defined, you're much more flexible with it. So I think that's where this one, I really like this chart from Gartner. Infrastructure, which ones are using it the most? Nonprofit again, and education. And I should point out, nonprofit for us, there are a few large educational institutions that are nonprofit that are in there. So that's partially why they're skewed a bit. Banking and finance and education are big. Education is usually centered around the vo-tech schools like DeVry and things like that we have in this country here. Healthcare, it's good to see that. I think healthcare, what I've looked at, all the data that healthcare consumes, because I do reports for industries as well. Healthcare is definitely going through a modernization and a certification. And I think that's partially due to what COVID brought on the world. How do they react better? How do their systems handle things better? And then they can handle people better, hopefully. The areas that are in infrastructure that are being used across the different industry, admin and ops obviously is an important one. Network essentials, just the basics of TCP/IP and network infrastructure, all of those things are in there and important to companies. So is network design, though. Those go hand in hand. If you put the two together, network essential and design is very big for companies. You can see which industries use Windows more or which ones use Linux and Unix more. Aerospace is Linux and Unix. Transportation is Windows. Just an interesting foundation there. And then if you look at cloud, and I think I've got a couple more here to go. Cloud, I think, is our quickest growing area. And again, I think it's the foundation for AI and IoT. Public clouds, I think, are going to become more and more important. And I think I've already talked about application architectures and serverless. Cloud native is driving a lot of the marketplaces. Here are some predictions that I've gathered from our customers. And these are interesting because conversations with customers, they always come up with things that are important. By 2024, most cloud platforms will provide at least some services that are executed at the point of need. So that's an interesting one. When you look at these, if you build yourself with a serverless architecture and you have all of these things in place, you will be able to take care of that, execute at the point of need. So there's a lot of things that are kind of dependent on each other. I think 5G is also going to help and hinder until we really get 5G closer to that zero latency that the promise was. And especially if there are 25 billion devices connected through IoT to edge cloud services. So I think that's going to be important. Cloud ops has clearly emerged, and I don't think it emerges, it's emerged. Your service mesh is going to be very, very important. And I think we need to all continue to look at open source and what it can provide for us. So there were a couple interesting stats that by 2025, 90% of software application providers that consume cloud services as part of their product offerings will also market, sell, and provision their offerings through cloud marketplaces. So the cloud marketplace idea is really going to get bigger and bigger, where, rather than just APIs connected, you're starting to offer cloud marketplaces where people can come and share in your cloud services. So this next one here, this next slide, another one from Gartner, they have a way with building these really cool looking graphs. But what I looked at here is I take what they've got and look at how do I put these into similar buckets. So I look at the expanding the use of cloud services as these areas here that are going to help with that. The application development trends are going to help be run by these things here: container management, server mesh, API-centric software as a service. Those are application-oriented development trends. Extension of cloud services, here where we're extending to the edge and distributing it, and little cloudlets are starting to evolve. I don't know if that's like applets were back in the, whenever that was, 90s, 2000s. And then leverage cloud as a delivery model. How can you start to do that sort of thing? So I think these are areas that the cloud is going directionally, and you can see where they say 6 to 8 years and 0 to 1 year is now. So they're saying right now, obviously multi-cloud is important. Everyone in the world has typically multi-cloud and mixed cloud, hybrid cloud in their organization. Marketplaces are starting to emerge more and more. They're in the now part, and cloud AI developer services. I still think we're missing the whole pipeline to that cloud though. So I think that's an area where we all need to up our game. Who's using cloud the most? Nonprofit again. Banking and finance, which I find really fascinating. You would think the most conservative, most secure, concerned industry is banking and finance, and yet they're all in on the cloud pretty quickly. Manufacturing, obviously, I think needs to. Insurance, education are no surprise to me. Any surprises for me here was that pharmaceuticals lagged behind, because we work with a lot of pharma, and they're all in on the cloud, but usage is just not there showing that's what they're doing. So the nonprofits for us, when I look at it, it's UN, SOS, United Services, March of Dimes, and then the education area, Syracuse University, the Learning People, DeVry, they have these VOTEC schools. So those two kind of make sense for why they're growing. And if we look at here, the subcategories of cloud, you can see where Amazon and Microsoft, and the great thing here is they're pretty much in all. So Amazon's in nonprofit, so is Microsoft. Banking, finance, both. So it really does tell the story. The world is hybrid and multi-cloud and mixed cloud. So it's when someone says we're all in on this, I typically look at their usage consumption, and they're in both. Most companies have both, and I think it's the way the world is going for a while. Cloud essentials, that indicates to me when industries are starting to migrate to the cloud. There's a lot of cloud essential being consumed. So that's the industries I think that are a little bit more nascent. Security, my favorite topic, and my favorite because I think it's the most important of all of them, and it intersects all of the other areas. You can't have a good data program if it's not secure. You can't migrate to the cloud if it's not secure. You can't build software in a CI/CD fashion unless it's secure. You can't program and release code through an API if that's not secure. So all of it, and your infrastructure. I mean, again, like ham and eggs, infrastructure and security. You have to have it. Security is the major part, I think, that everyone needs to focus on. So one thing I would say, rules of engagement may be changing. When state actors attack private entities, that is opening new rules of engagement. Security independence, we want to make sure we're not dependent on Amazon or Microsoft for their cloud security, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you have your own. Security is going to evolve. I know we're running out of time, I think. Are we? Yeah, I think we're getting close. Security is going to evolve. The interesting thing, I need a better word than evolve because it's the quickest changing of all. You know, security changes so fast. We see that cyber ranges really help companies and individuals learn how to evolve quicker than the hackers. Privacy is a big, important piece, and so is remote working. Let's click into here. Security meshes are becoming big, remote and permanent. I just want to get through these. Simulations, simulations are really important. Having game day scenarios, being able to go through what's important in security. And once you know, I would save security to the last, and I'd say it's the most important, and yet I'm going to cover it the quickest and least, unfortunately. The industry is using it the most. Education, they had to pivot big time because of COVID. So I think that's why that one. Banking and finance, I would expect up there. Government and military, thankfully they are up there a little bit. They should be higher. Training and development, kind of interesting that they're up there, but education I think had to pivot, and that was just because of COVID and what happened there. The industries that are using and the different parts that they're using, pretty much across the board. It's just not as big of patterns. The numbers aren't as big for them, but it's pretty much across the board. I think most organizations see the need. And when you see security essentials in here somewhere, right here, these are the companies that are just kind of getting going, the areas and where it will become more important. Now, remember where we started, versatilists. That's where I think we're all headed, where you can do several different things, both deep and broad. Years ago, we called these people a jack of all trades, when rightfully now we might want to refer to them as Jane of all domain, because you need to have all domains in inception. Or if we want to do a more politically neutral one, a person of immersion, where you immerse yourself in all of the technologies and everything you do. So that's it. Sorry, I took the whole hour. Is that the whole hour? Are
there maybe some attendees who have questions for Mike? Just raise your hand if you do.
Or just go off mute. Oh, there's a hand. Yep. Go ahead. Is there a question there, or should we just unmute them? There we go.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Wayne. I have a question regarding your remark about the skills for the next 10 years. That the skills are more versatile, and it looks familiar to me, like it is more focused on people who are more dyslexic, because my son is dyslexic, and I've been reading all kinds of books. And one of the books was written by two American neurological doctors, and all the skills that the dyslexic people have are needed for the 21st century or the next 10 years. So I was wondering, is that what you have found out, or is just something that you think that gonna be needed?
That's a very interesting question, because I think the skills of the future, whether it's dyslexia, whether it's where someone fits somewhere on the spectrum of autism as well, because there are very functional people in all of those. A lot of dyslexic people do go into tech. It just seems to be more accommodating and better for a lot of them. So I don't think these were engineered for dyslexia or any other sort of type of person that they may have a different skill. So I don't think these were built knowing those underlying issues. But I will say, I do know quite a few developers who are dyslexic, and I actually think I have a little bit in certain cases, more with letters than numbers. So I think it's not built that way, but it's going to accommodate those in the future. But that would be a really interesting study to put in front of HR tech as well.
Okay. I have one more question. What do you mean with whining with diversity?
What do I mean with what?
Whining with diversity.
Winning.
Winning. It's if it is winning, it is two
Versnelde?
ends, and that is whining. It sounds to me more whining and dining. You know, with wines and advertising.
Sorry, that's a typo. That's winning, but that's an interesting joke. I'm going to use that in the future. I'm going to leave it and use it. You can whine with diversity, but you can also win with it, because those who whine with it really aren't with the game, because diversity does make products better.
Okay, thank you.
That's great.
Hi. Hi, Mike. I have one question. We need more talent in Holland. We need to get better education. That's clear. But I'm just wondering, how do you address this to your clients? Because I guess bigger clients understand this, but smaller clients don't always have the time or the money to get this in the program, and their developers are leaving. So I was wondering, as a soft tech company that you are, and you're providing programs, how do you address this to clients?
That's a great question. And that's kind of the gist of this whole deck, is you have to train the people that you have that stay in your country. You know, there need to be programs for people that might have dropped out of high school, or might have went to a year, maybe a couple years of college, but didn't graduate. Those people need to have an opportunity to come into the tech landscape, because they can be trained just like anyone else you have. You know, and it's unfortunate, because the way life goes, it seems like when those people drop out of high school and when they go to college and don't finish, they're younger and they're aggressive and they want to do other things. And then as they get older, they start to realize, well, I can do anything if I put my mind to it. We need to somehow figure out how to get their mind to it earlier, so that they don't end up not in the tech world. The other part of it is, I think we need to make it more accommodating for everyone. I think the problem with tech is it seems to be labeled as hardcore mathematics. Like you have to be a mathematician, you have to be a super brain to go into tech, which you don't. There are plenty of ways to learn and to build your confidence, build your experience. I know so many programmers who are English majors. Like that was their college degree, was English or history. Nothing to do with programming, and they're great programmers. So I think we have to somehow take the stigma away from tech is for hardcore mathematicians. But one other thing we also have to do is remove the kind of the misogynistic climate that a lot of tech is in. We need to make it more diverse. We need to bring people from all over into tech to make sure that we do have that diverse and non, geek atmosphere that it currently has. So I think there are a lot of things. I think they're social more than they are educational. But part of education is social. So great question. I would love to see that change around the globe to where more people say I'm going into tech when they declare their college major, or just not have to declare it. I don't get that. I was fortunate one of our kids went to a college, they didn't have to declare their major and they got to make up their own major. So, and it unfortunately was an Ivy League, so he got to go through and do what he wanted to do and graduate with the degree he wanted, rather than the one that they pre-established and said, you fit into that mold or you fit into that mold. That's not the world today. The mold you prepared yourself for, you may be in something completely different by the time you're 20 years into your career. So I think there's a lot around the globe. It's not just the Netherlands, it's everywhere. In the Netherlands, you guys have a couple primary cities and a few secondary cities. So I don't know how there is mobility between them. But I think it's both a social, political, and educational thing that we have to tackle. It's not the technology part. People can learn. People do learn.
Are there any other questions? Don't see any raising hands, so I guess not. Guess your story was all clear, Mike.
Good. This to me is one of my most important slides here, is the learning and training. And I think Jacqueline, related to your question, if people can be given the opportunity to learn and do career development, they will stick with tech.
Well, I see
Yes.
already some thank yous in the chat. So
Aubrey, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. Mike, I'm a bit curious as to the shortages problem in the technology sector. I think it's a major consideration. I was just curious as to your opinion about this. What will the side effects be of this? Because there will certainly be some negative side effects, I can assume. Do you have some thoughts on that?
I do, and it's a difficult one because the shortages are not just regional. It's not located in Holland. It's not located in England. It's not located in India or the United States. It's all over the globe. And the tech shortages, I think, are because people have this preconceived notion of what tech is. And again, I think it goes back to, if you didn't do well younger in school in math, you might have eliminated yourself from that path when you should not have done that. Because, like a lot of us that are late bloomers, like I didn't go to college until I was 23. So I had already graduated and kind of experienced life and realized I needed to go back. And then I wasn't afraid of math when I went back. So I think that's something that we have to figure out at the early levels in educational development. How do we make learning fun? Because I think we've all taken our eye off of what is the goal for learning. The goal for learning is to get better at whatever you're learning, to do it better, differently, that sort of thing. Not just to get a grade and to get done and to move on. It's to get better at that. So if we can make learning fun, and for me, math wasn't fun because I didn't realize how to apply it. I didn't realize that I could look at sports and analyze, statistics and things like that that were of interest to me at the time. So I think until we make learning fun at the younger age, and then make learning engaging as people grow through their career, and then make learning again as an adult, again, it needs to be engaging and fun. No one wants to sit and be bored to death with someone talking about a class in Python. You don't want it. So I think we're going to always have a shortage because people are put off by the barriers that tech has, and it doesn't have the best reputation as well. But I think if we can start by fixing it at the younger ages, and then with people in an organization, that whole idea of pre-skilling, where you give someone a shot, like, yeah, let's try you out as a data scientist. You've done really good work with your business analytics. Let's take that to the next step.
Do you think businesses will go bust because they can't find developers, for example, or is that extreme? Do you think?
I don't think it's an extreme. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see, I hope we don't continue to see all the big consulting services grab all the good talent because they pay well, because then they consult to those companies that can't find talent. It's just, in a way, that's mind-boggling that a company that needs talent in, let's say, Amsterdam, doesn't hire someone who's going to ask for this salary, and a large international consulting services company hires that person and then puts them on site at that company because that company couldn't find that talent. We need to figure out, how do companies of all sizes attract and retain talent? And when you look at this really is, I think, a game changer. If you make good learning opportunities available for those tech customers, those tech learners, they will stay with you. They will continue to grow. And the biggest thing about that is institutional knowledge doesn't walk out the door when they take a job with a large consulting firm. If you keep them happy, you keep them learning, you keep their career growing, they will stay with you. Your question, though, is how do you get them? I think we're in that chicken and egg where the company that needs them might be losing them to the other company who's then putting them on their site. We need to figure out how to keep people understanding they can work anywhere. And I think COVID's shown that. Remote work works.
Thanks. Yeah, clear. Thank you.
And I should be clear on that too. We love the business consulting services companies too that hire a lot of that talent. They do a lot of work with us and a lot of business with us. I just think that there's a market competition for talent. And I think my statement is, you can't outcompete necessarily on the money side of things, but you can compete on the options for learning and development, career growth, being part of a team that builds something that's unique and different. And I think with the younger generation, when I say the younger generation, millennials might be more interested in building something of use than something that's just going to make money. There seems to be a little bit more idealism with the younger generation, which I